Carl's nice enough to say this was my meeting and I allowed you here. I really don't think of it that way. You hired me and allowed me to be up here by every stretch of the imagination. So thank you very, very much. I do have answers about SB 10. I do have answers about the JFS parking lot. I don't know the guy who's got the 10 shopping carts, but we can still work on that issue. And I might have an answer about the pothole issue that's underneath the 163. Well, I'll just start off. Everyone hear me very well? All right, thank you. Good to see you. Good evening, everyone, and thank you all for being here. And thank you very much, Carl, for all you do for Serra Mesa. It's a privilege to advocate for the Serra Mesa community and to work with and for all of you. I'm glad to be here because Serra Mesa is right in the heart of the city, needs a lot of attention from the city staff. And that means everything from Serra Mesa proper to Birdland. If you feel like Birdland is its own, how many people are from Birdland? I'm just wondering. There you go. Is it its own neighborhood or is it part of Serra Mesa? Okay, all right. Okay. It is settled. All right. I still say when I go into Birdland that I'm in Birdland. Yes. For those who don't know me, my name is Raul Campillo. I'd like to serve as your council member for District 7. And that stretches all the way from the 5 freeway west of Linda Vista, down the hill from Linda Vista, all the way east to the 125 freeway, east of Lake Murray and San Carlos, and up to Tierra Santa as well. And Serra Mesa is right in the heart of that. 2023 was our 3rd year in office. We're proud of the successes that we've had. A lot of the successes are building blocks upon building blocks upon building blocks, as many of you know. Folks who've been on planning group, the people who've been on the community council, who've been on the airport advisory group, everybody knows it's building block by building block. This last year, you got this going on? Very good. You know, just from a recognizing important people in the community and recognizing their contributions, we presented 42 proclamations, 375 commendations to folks who are doing really, really good work. People like Gary Bloom, who installed trash pickers throughout our community, people who bring awareness to issues like human trafficking, and of course, that's the fun stuff. That's the fun stuff where we get to recognize people's contributions, but we know it means a lot to folks. In more concrete terms, $8.5 million for District 7 projects this last year, which included funds for Village Glen Drives, Mill and Pave, 191,000 for District 7 organizations like Kitchens for Good, which do vital work fostering community and fun events for our children, and lots of other organizations in between. There's a rule about how much money we're allowed to give to nonprofits and where that goes. But in essence, you know, anywhere between $2,000 to $5,000. Some organizations get $10,000 through our office. But doing all sorts of good work, humanitarian work, social work, art, things like that throughout San Diego. In 2024, I want to first thank my wife, Nadia, who gave birth to our baby boy, Rafael, in October. And she's been helping along with that as well. So we had $8.5 million, we had 342 proclamations, and 1 baby boy. So that was fun. Pictures behind you. Yes, he's a cutest kid I've ever seen. I'm biased, of course. But I'm really glad to be here in Serra Mesa talking about community in-person events. This is our 4th annual town hall. We, instead of doing one state of the district where you have 157,000 constituents, it's big, right? I don't do that. I go community by community. And so we have 4 town halls this week. But Serra Mesa, thanks for letting us kick us off, Carl. I was honored to join Taft Middle School leaders as well as Shayna Hazen, your trustee for the San Diego Unified School Board, when we opened the joint use field at Taft Middle School. I know that many people have been really enjoying that. If it's not still clean, tell us. We want to go clean it. There's lots of good things to preserve there. And you know, the person who got that off the ground was Councilmember Donna Fry way back in the day when this was District 6. And so, you know, give credit where it's due. We also helped proclaim September 21st, 2023 to be 92123 Day, so we could celebrate our zip code And I want to thank Holly for organizing that festival and being at the post office. John Sema for hosting events on the actual day. It was really fun to go to the block parties. And no matter where my staff and I are in District 7, I know that we're met with kindness and support. People who just want to see things get done for their children, for their families, for their businesses. Those are the things that we are trying to address and address as quickly as possible. Couldn't do it alone, obviously. Miles Noel, who's my representative for Serra Mesa, he's been taking your calls and your emails first and foremost. If you want a stop sign, if you're going to talk about that, you call him so that I can say, yeah, we're getting a stop sign. Vic Fatil, who's my director of community engagement. Anthony Hackett, who looks at the Navajo community, but we work as a big team and get things done together. Crane Friedman, my director of communications, is here as well for the last 8 months or 9 months. If you're wondering how we got to step up in artwork and social media and the Raul roundup email, he's been doing a great job. So let's talk a minute about constituent work. So about a year and a half ago, I read a book. It was by a restaurateur whose name is Will Guardia, and the book is called Unreasonable Hospitality. He was the general manager for a restaurant in New York City called 11 Madison Park, which was rated the best restaurant in the world for several years. And it still is. If you haven't heard of this book, I suggest reading it. It's incredible. But I read that book and I thought to myself, unreasonable hospitality. We have a lot of reasonable hospitality. What I'm trying to tell my staff, which they bought into because I signed them the book and they all read it and we all got together and we talked about how it inspires us. We're all bought in on how we can go beyond what's reasonable to make sure that you feel good about your community, that you feel like your tax dollars being spent, that your government's listening to you. Those things really matter. And the mantra I've been using before I read that book even for 3 whole years in office was bring it back to District 7. Every item that comes before our city council, every committee meeting, when I'm on the SANDAG meetings as well, when I show up for the mayor can't be there, I'm his alternate. I think about, is this going to help District 7? And that really guides our office. Storm pipes were replaced earlier this year along the hillside off McCaw Lane. The storm pipe portion of the project was completed, but staff were supposed to go forward with the revegetation of that hillside to make sure it was stable for the structures at the top. And after continued delays for the revegetation portion, we had concerns. And we saw last week what those concerns look like. And we know we're going to have more issues coming this week. Now, thank God that nothing in District 7 looks like it did in South Crest or in other parts of the South Bay and in southeastern San Diego. I know a lot of people still did suffer. I know businesses suffered. I'm sure there's several homeowners who had a leak. That I haven't had any of them reach out to my office for help. But that sort of thing, the revegetation of this hillside in Serra Mesa, that is something that needs to get done when city staff says it, because when a storm comes, that vegetation is what preserves the hillside. Make sure that we don't have to deal with that. We we get lawsuits. We just had one today at City Council about a person who we forgot to turn a water pump off when we switched some software at the city, and his house got flooded with 40,000 gallons of water. And so now between insurance, the city and everything, it takes years to litigate it, right? But we don't want that to happen to anybody, none of you. So we were able to get that project back on track, get it revegetated, make sure that that process is done. It's the least that you deserve in your community, because that is a safety issue. It's a property protection issue, big time money for those who might have been hurt by this. And that isn't just for those people who live on McCaw Lane. It's really about everybody else too. Because if someone might be walking by, who knows where they are, and maybe they're standing at the top and they get sucked under. And then if we have loss of human life, then we are at the worst possible circumstance. Am I right? In addition, my office has gotten many emails, phone calls. I've had people walk up to me to talk about Campillo Heights Park. I think it's unacceptable that the state of that park is in right now. I've emphasized with the Parks Department that we need to get that done. Health and safety issues, the families and individuals who want to use it, the families that do use it, even though it is not in the state that we want it to be. I've been pushing forward to try to get that prioritized. So I want you to know, when you come up to me in public and tell me what's going on, Miles, Anthony, and Vic will tell you they usually get a Microsoft Teams message from me right away that says, hey, where are we on this? Now, I'm happy to say that most of the time they say, oh yeah, we've gotten 4 or 5 get it done app requests, and we've tried to pivot and get that in place. My staff is really on top of that stuff. So do not hesitate to tell me about it, tell them about it. Long story short, we're going to continue to serve the community daily. If you have any city related issues in the area or outside the area, if you have family members and neighbors in other parts of town that are not getting needed and getting served, I will go to bat for them too. Our borders are District 7, but our service does not end at those borders. Now let's talk about streets. I know that many of you have mentioned a lot about the main arteries, the major arteries across District 7 need improvement. The last 3 years, we've been trying to push for that, make sure that the mayor allocates the time so that the contracts can get done and then fully funded and then issued, signed off, and then the asphalt trucks show up. It is one of the hardest things to wrap my head around is just how complicated that is. Most of the time it's because there's pre-engineering, pre-design, all those sorts of things that really get in the way. But when we have major roads like Marathon that were done this last year, Village Glen that got done this year, I feel very, very good. Now, the previous administration had not done a study on the roads since 2016. We just got all that data back. You probably read about it in the newspaper. The state of our roads is less than a rank of 70 on average. 70 is what you're supposed to try to aim for at a minimum. I think it came back at 62 or 63, which is better than some cities and worse than other cities, but it's not good enough for you and it's not good enough for me. So just know that we're paying attention to that. And
or the visitors that come to our city.
Tell me about it. Yeah, they notice it for sure. We know that our streets in Serra Mesa need more attention, and when we get that funding, we push it through. I'll tell you that when a contract is slated on the city website to say it's going to happen this day, we email. If it says it's going to be started in February of 2024, I email my staff and say, hey, it says February 2024. August, September, October, November, December, we make sure we know that it's pushing through. And oftentimes September comes around, they say, oh, there was a delay in engineering, we need an extra 2 months. That sort of thing happens. I get it, but it's no less frustrating. But we're well ahead of the game on the streets that are on the schedule to make sure that they don't fall behind, because there's a million streets and the transportation director is sitting there and he's got a stack of papers, and then the city attorney's office is sitting on the legal contract and they need the stamp and it waits there. So we're there to make sure that we keep those things going. Those of you who know my policy and budget advisor, Sana Lawando, she's the person who is really tracking those streets community by community with the appropriate community rep. So just this last year alone in our district, we repaved 92 streets. That was 300% more than the average from the last 5 years. Mayor Gloria.
In 23, the sign says 24.
What am I looking at?
2024.
In 20.
Over FY 24.
Fiscal year 24. So basically the fiscal year is always 1 year.
Okay.
The number is always 1 year ahead. So realistically, this was every meeting going into the mayor once a month to say, he says, what are your priorities? It's like, these are our priorities and these are the streets that need to get done. The COO of the city, Eric Dargan, the guy who came to us from Texas because of his expertise in being able to run the bureaucracy of public works, sitting with him every month and my chief of staff saying, these are the roads that need to get done. These are not the things that we, yes.
How long has he been with us?
He joined us in November of 2022.
That didn't require a vote.
It did require a vote. The mayor appointed him, nominated him, and then the city council confirmed him. Yes. There's a few hires that the mayor has to come to us for to confirm, like the chief of police, the fire chief, the chief operating officer, and I think the director of finance. No, not the director of finance. He was in already. But there's a few of them, but thanks for that question. We are expecting this year to get 53.4 miles paved in District 7, meaning 16% of the total roads, major roads, will receive their new life. If you've driven along Village Glen, and I keep pointing back to that one, there's 12 other main community streets that we push through to get paved. You'll see that work is happening. And that is driven by your requests, by your emails, by your insistence that we can then package together and send, hey, our constituents have sent us 15 to 20 emails. What's going on? And it takes that type of governance because the mayor's office is the executive and he's independently elected. Back when the city manager form of government existed, The council members picked the COO of the city who worked for us to go execute the plans, and the mayor was independently elected and was not the executive of the office. We changed that, you all changed that in about 2005 or 2006. So it's a different form of government. It takes a lot longer. And it's not as responsive as it used to be. It comes with other advantages, of course, but more accountability for the person who's not executing to be not reelected if you don't like it. But fundamentally, we are really working hard on that. The council approved $138 million for street paving across the city. 1.5 million to fix the most dangerous intersections where there's the most car accidents, the most pedestrians hit, and $500,000 for traffic calming. That means if you put in a roundabout, that means you change the stoplight to a stop sign to a street light. There's all sorts of different types of things that fall under traffic calming. Adding in speed bumps. Those speed bumps are generally not as allowable as you think. The fire department usually stops those because they damage our trucks.
Narrowing the road to the Bible and reducing that considered
Oh,
then when you put bike lanes in and you narrow it 2 lanes.
I don't know if that qualifies under the definition of traffic calming for the city's transportation department, but okay. No, that's all good. And when I say keeping our streets safe, that really matters to me. I've had people call our office, like I said, about stop signs and meeting me in person. The 92123, I had a couple of them. A stop sign along Rhonda. There's kind of a weird little circular U street that a lot of people fly through. Mobley had that one. And I know Miles, we're getting pretty close to confirming that one. How many months does it take the city's transportation department to actually put the traffic study together? 3 months, and then they say, oh, it doesn't qualify under our algorithm. And then I say it qualifies under the council members saying, here's the memo to forget the algorithm and go forward. But that has to happen. You have to do that first before I can then write the letter. Earhart Street as well as one of those streets. And so though transportation may say that the stop sign doesn't qualify, we push very hard for that. And then on top of that, it takes a couple months for them to take the city street crew, get the stop sign printed off they actually have like a little mini factory that prints these signs, and then they go put it up and they notify us when that's going to happen. With our recent overall index, as I pointed out, we're really behind, and we're looking to invest more and more funding into our street allocation. I think that when we think about get it dones, I know that's a big thing that people come up with, because how many of you put in a get it done? How many of you have gotten a case closed, solved, and keep your hand up if it was not solved? Right. That is a big problem that every council member, when our data team comes to us, when our transportation team comes to us in the budget hearings that are coming up in April and May, when they say, oh yeah, we're doing this and doing that, like that is the thing we tell them is like, you can't do that. Like that, if there's anything that makes people feel like we're not listening to them, it's saying, oh, no problem there. But our offices know that the problem is still there. And that's why I'm so glad Miles is here to really drive through it as fast as we can. And if you see that, the person you should email is us, so that we can raise that flag for you. In a manner of speaking, we're the political accountability for city staff, who there's 11,000 of them, and they're trying very, very hard to get everything done. But the mistakes that get made, we can open that box back up and go and finish it so that you don't have to live with it, because you shouldn't have to live with it. Let's talk about policy accomplishments just for a minute. One of the biggest things that we've been trying to do is make the city of San Diego more family friendly. There's many things that go into family friendly, right? But that is the way I think about it. Since taking office, improving childcare access has been one of the biggest things for me. Knowing how expensive childcare is, knowing the barrier it creates for families who want to go back to work, but it's less expensive to stay home and take care of your kid instead of going to a job to make the exact same amount of money you pay for childcare instead of just spending it with your child. Those are the types of things we want to give people choices. We got to make childcare more affordable, more accessible. We've done a good work in that, securing some federal funding to open a lot of slots for folks. We've worked with our SDPD officers to help them also have at their training facility on that's Murphy Canyon. It's Murphy Canyon, right? Murphy Canyon. I forget if it's, I think Murray Ridge, Murphy Canyon. There's a lot of Murrays and Murphys. And they having that input in there. There was a lot of federal funding and state funding from our elected officials in Congress. Scott Peters and State and Senate Pro Tem Tony Atkins helped get that money. Kinder Care was part of that. Pushing forward, the Cushman Foundation was part of that. But making sure that we have the childcare for our city employees, because we don't want to lose police officers because they're like, hey, I just can't afford to be here if I have no one to help take care of my kid. One thing that I push really hard for, so we continue to recruit really good city employees, is to double the paid parental leave. The city of San Diego's paid parental leave for decades was 4 weeks. I pushed to get it to 8, and then we were able to secure that in our last budget. That was massively important. I had a lot of people come up to me and say, parental leave was a disaster for when you get to week 4, it's really just not enough time to have your child transition back to work. Think about it, like it's really, really a big problem. I just want to say this, Chipotle offers 12 weeks. We should compete with Chipotle. Or congratulate Chipotle. Long story short, those sorts of things that make it so that families can stay in San Diego, that our city workers have that childcare, and expanding that so that everyone in the community can have that, partnering with groups like Tutris that helps facilitate that in their web design, their website, and through the special type of benefit package that they have. They basically help guide people to find the affordable childcare that's near them. We work with a lot of these partners. The YMCA is a big partner of ours as well. So really, really pushing hard for that. Smart streetlights was a big one that just happened a couple months ago. I'm on the public safety committee. I was a prosecutor before I got elected to city council. Very strong advocate for public safety. And this is a controversial one. We know that in 2017, the mayor put in smart streetlights that have a camera in them, claiming it was an environmental thing, but they didn't tell anybody it had a camera in it. And then the police department didn't tell anybody that they were using those cameras. Now, they solved some very important crimes, and they actually proved some very terrible crimes, the people innocent who were accused of them. But fundamentally, we can't have a technology that we're paying money for and then not tell the people how we're using it. So we changed those rules to make sure that we have this privacy advisory board that looks at it. We make sure that the details of the contract are well vetted. Sometimes they recommend the contract to us. Sometimes they say we shouldn't do the contract. It's an advisory opinion. But fundamentally with the smart streetlights, I push hard to advance the smart streetlights to get them back out there. So now we have 500 more streetlights. They are technology that essentially has a camera in it. And it's not like a police officer is watching you through the camera. If a person commits a crime and it's called in, the police department can go and say, hey, maybe this camera saw that, and look back at their data. It saves for about 14 days on the cloud. And if it's not used within 14 days, it's deleted. So if someone gets hurt, they can go back and say, hey, let's see what that camera showed us for that time frame. It also blocks out like your backyards, your windows. If it's next to your home, they block out with them so that the technology essentially screens off private property, schools, things like that. So we've tried to take into account those types of privacy measures while also making sure that if someone is victimized, we can help them. Second thing it does is it reads license plates. It's got an automatic license plate reader so that if someone is driving a stolen car or there's a report of a crime with that car, we will get a hit on it and be able to go track it down. And that's been that has been used already to identify a car that was used in a homicide. So it's really important that we make sure the police department has the tools it needs. Also make sure that your privacy concerns are addressed. There were community groups that said, hey, we feel uncomfortable having this so close to us. Can you move it a block down so it's not really looking right at us? Police department said, yeah, sure, we'll make you comfortable, we'll move it, that's no problem. What we do have them though, is that 500 of them set around the city, and most of them are major arterial ways where people are committing crime and getting onto the freeways to get out of town or just get away, right? We do not have I think we have one in Serra Mesa that's in Birdland. It's near the hospital. It's over there on the Sharp Mesa. And I've asked them, I said, hey, if we're gonna put 500 of these throughout the city, my constituents want the benefit of this type of technology? Why aren't you doing more of these? Parks are one location because after hours, parks tend to draw folks who are looking for a dark place. Lot of car break-ins, lot of what's that piece of the car that keeps getting stolen out of the catalytic converter? I always want to say carburetor, but I'm not really an engineer guy. Like the catalytic converter that gets stolen, like, hey, we need these in the community, just generally speaking, at the right spots, of course. So I push hard to say, hey, when we get our next 500, you have to divide these evenly across the city. You can't concentrate them such that only certain groups are being monitored and certain groups also receiving the benefit. These need to be spread out more evenly so that when someone is victimized in our community, we can actually help them with that. And I will point out one thing, the DA's office I'll call on you in 2 seconds. The DA's office made a really big deal about this when we were talking about this policy at City Council. There was a person who was involved in a drunken fight in the gas lamp one morning, back when these were turned on in early 2019. And he defended himself with a metal, essentially a metal sign that was in the middle of the street. The police arrested that guy initially. From the witness interviews, they said, oh, this guy tried to kill somebody. They arrested him for homicide. They went and looked at that and they realized he was being attacked by somebody, and it was self-defense. So a person avoided being charged with murder who was not appropriately charged with murder. So these go both ways. It cuts both ways. But I do also really care about that privacy aspect, and we ask a lot of those types of questions. Your question, please. Absolutely. This is just a snapshot of where District 7 is. And it's sort of the pinkish area in the middle is our district, going all the way out to Lake Murray. Serra Mesa's right here between the freeways, and then Linda Vista down the hill. So yes, you can access that. You can look at the absolute location of where it is, and they're putting those in place. Good question. Yes.
If we get more of these streetlights, who's going to be the person that's going to decide?
The police department has to announce to the council and to the privacy advisory board that was set up where they intend to locate them and publish it on this map.
How's it funded?
We don't have funding for more streetlights right now. Or did you say, how is it funding? How is it funding? It's partially our general fund tax dollars, and it was also partially grant funding from the federal government. Part of the reason we were doing it at the pace that we were doing it is we had a grant that was about to expire. So we wouldn't have been able to afford as many as we had, but it's a mix of different tax dollars, but a federal grant as well.
Right.
Yes.
For the existing streetlights, just overall, what was the budget?
Budget for that, was it 40? The question was, what was the overall budget for the current 500 streetlights? Hold on a second. 45 million, that was 14. Was it 14 over several years? My impression is that it was 14, it was like 14.5 million over 5 years. I think that's what it was. So the contract's a 5-year contract with the provider. And if they break, they fix them on their dime.
Okay, so that is the next question, and this goes to many of the things that come up here, including the 8.5 million that you said that was community improvements. What is the maintenance budget for all of these new things? Because all of the streets not being repaid, the city of San Diego has a history of saying, look at all this money we spent, but then they don't have the budget for the maintenance. Maintenance is not included, and it's not included to the level that it should be. Someone wants to start fixing problems in San Diego. The solution is maintenance, maintenance, maintenance. And we do not have a maintenance budget for anything that we do in the city of San Diego.
I couldn't agree with you more. The phrase that I have heard more from city staff that just blows my mind is deferred maintenance. At which point I say it's not deferred maintenance if you've waited 30 years, because now it's rehabilitation. You can't maintain it now. You have to replace it. Eastern Division, if you walk through Eastern Division, they need a whole new building really to be up to modern day standards of what police deserve to work in. Your question is absolutely correct. One of the big things that our new COO is doing right now is the reallocation of internal money. Every single project essentially starts off as a capital improvement project. Council members say, hey, can we open this account? We have it on our ledger at the city. We say, oh, we think it's going to cost this much to plan, design, construct. and then it doesn't have maintenance. Because a capital improvement project doesn't anticipate that. That comes back to city staffing. How many librarians, how many electricians, how many carpenters, how many janitorial workers go into preserving that. So part of the maintenance is baked into our general provision of services, but it doesn't include the point that you're making, which is the pothole will eventually come loose. The tile in the roof of the library will eventually come loose. How do we deal with that? Eric Dargan, our COO, is discussing a plan with other city leaders to figure out. We have a lot of CIPs that have, oh, here's $1 million for your design. And it sits there and the design goes old. It seems a little ridiculous to do that instead of, hey, that should be put into a maintenance budget for something that's built and ready to go. We shouldn't be partially funding about 1 million things, completing only about 20 things, and then no maintenance funding for the 20 things we already got done.
I appreciate you recognizing that. You know, moving forward, I think it's a major concern that it needs to be, this goes, I mean, you brought up, Jack, what was you bring up Jack Roy, you brought up the old city manager thing. This goes back, it's not a new thing, it goes back to city managers and Susan Golding and Jack Roy, and all through the ages, whether or not we have a strong mayor. We still have this problem. I don't want to see another slide from another city council that tell the community how much more money they spend. I want to see slides from city council members saying how they've maintained the existing infrastructure that we have. It's not sexy. Nobody gets elected for maintenance. You have brought up Donna Fry. Yes, Donna Fry did a lot for this community, but the things that she proposed 15 years ago, when they were $1.2 million when she proposed it, they're not $5.8 million, $2 million, and that's not including the maintenance costs.
Yep.
We have to do better, and maintenance is a big.
100%. Part of maintenance is staffing. That means, and as you clearly know, you've clearly read the news for the last 30 years. Part of our issue of losing so many employees between the years 2010, 2020, we really just did not treat our city workers appropriately. They got blamed a lot by lots of different council members, different mayors, whatever. And basically everyone was on a pay raise freeze for 6-7 years. They finally started giving one to the police officers. Now we've started to recruit back workers who left us and have come back to us. First, the courts struck down the removal of the pension that was illegally done. So the pension is back. A lot of people are coming back to the city because they say, hey, my retirement is now good. I should come back and work. The second thing is with the raises we've given to city employees means we can attract better workers. We can attract workers that left us to go to the county or other municipalities. And what it takes is maintenance teams. A big chunk of the city budget, we say, oh, this department has 100 workers slated for it in its department. But they know they only have 75 workers to fill those slots currently right now. And we do a little bit of a budgetary, I'll let you use that word, yeah. We might be in legal trouble if I call it that word, but a budgetary maneuver, which is called it's saving, it's staffing savings, vacancy savings, that's what it's called, vacancy savings. And so they basically say, we have 100 workers, but we only have 75, and so let's deduct the 25 slots from the budget so we can have a balanced budget, which means we never really intend to hire the 100 people you deserve. And that means the city at one point only had 8 electricians to fix the 6,000 streetlights. You all know the streetlights are out. What did that take? Here's what it took. And then we'll get back to the slides, but I appreciate it because you're bringing up the hardest problem that was created by leaders in the 1990s who led to all the pension stuff, meant all these things, budgetary problems, but this is where I'm going with this. We have our electricians who are unionized in the city of San Diego, but there's only 8 of them. Well, it takes multiple electricians to fix a street light. It takes a traffic control person as well. But at the rate of fixing a street light, 2 more were breaking. So you're never going to close that gap. Mayor Gloria went to our blue collar workers union, said, look, if we want to close the gap, we need to bring in outside help. We need to bring in outside contractors and electricians who can help us fix this faster. And once we get it back so that the curve is closing in on zero instead of widening to infinite, we won't use the outside contractors. In the meanwhile, we have hired back many more electricians. I can't tell you the exact number, but we have staffed up far more. My recollection at the last city meeting where this got brought up is it was up to like 17 is the number that's coming to my mind. Which means we've more than doubled our staff, which means the gap is closing and we've been able to put a lot more streetlights fixed. Now you gotta do that with potholes. Now you gotta do that with missing roof shingles at our city buildings. That means we gotta do that with our broken sprinklers at our parks. And it exists across the entire city. 3 years ago, we started re-implementing the raises for our city workers because they were consistently 17th or 18th out of 18 city governments in the entire county. We were paying the lowest for most categories. Now we're getting them back up to 9th or 8th or 7th. And with many of the very, very important things to get fast, like permits, so that small businesses can change out their kitchen, or they're building a new apartment complex, or you want to build an addition to your house. Permitting, we staffed up way more so that we can get that under control a lot faster. So, and those people are now closer to the 3rd or 4th ranked in the entire region instead of at the 18th. You're talking about a 25, 30-year problem, and I appreciate that you brought it up because it's important to get to that core of it. But I promise you this, next time I make this presentation, we're going to be talking about maintenance a lot more because you asked for it. Thank you. All right. We talked about the smart streetlights. Let's talk in some generally, I don't believe, no, at least no one from Serra Mesa has told us about this, but in other parts of our community, we had a lot of people dropping hateful flyers, anti-Semitic, anti-LGBT, anti lots of things, but that were threatening, that were deeply hostile and borderline violent. Was working with faith leaders and SDPD to come up with a policy. We're working on a policy to try to prevent that because no one deserves to have that put on their car or dropped on their sidewalk or on their driveway. Those hate incidents in a crime reporting system, we are working to improve our city's platform for putting those out there. It starts out in Del Cerro and La Mesa and San Carlos, and eventually it comes to your neighborhood. So we've been working on that very hard. Unsafe camping. Yes, please.
I've never seen one of those signs. Does anybody have anything that they look like ever in this area? So I've seen all the messaging. I've never seen.
Like I said, I don't think it got to Serra Mesa, but it was definitely a lot more in just east of you on the 15. East of the 15, I should say. I don't want to show them to you because they're pretty hateful, they're pretty terrible, but lots of, I mean, you can just imagine the terrible things that they say about gay people, say about Jewish people, say about any group of people, racial minorities, everything. It's pretty terrible. And it's basically trying to incite someone who could be radicalized to say, oh, I should now go and commit some violence on that group of people. Things that we saw like at the synagogue in Poway back in 2019, right? That's what we're trying to prevent. Unsafe camping. The biggest issue we see in the entire city is homelessness. Getting people the services they need means a lot of things to a lot of different people. I'm just going to answer the questions first before I get to my talking points. JFS, Jewish Family Service, they run the safe camping safe parking lot, not safe camping, safe parking lot on a contract with the city. The city owns that land. It's adjacent to the fire station 45. That used to be part of sort of the entire property of Qualcomm Stadium. We've sold everything that's on the other side of Friars Road to San Diego State University. We still maintain the parking lot on the top. It's still our property. As you point out, this neighborhood is becoming more and more expensive with crime, but that little area right there is not really fit for housing of other sorts at this point. But when the city was looking around for, hey, where can we tell people who live in their RVs and are homeless but live in an RV or a car where they can go. They used to go to a parking lot in Qualcomm Stadium. It's a lot bigger. We direct them there. COVID, there's lots of things. That little parking lot is one of the last spots that is not deep within a neighborhood, right? It's in the neighborhood, but it's at the bottom of the hill. It's I would say it's on the edge of the neighborhood.
The people are definitely coming. I've seen.
Surely they are.
I
And
live on Marathon right off of Rhonda.
Yeah.
I cul-de-sac.
sure,
So I see a lot of cars that are up there parked on Rhonda that, don't belong there.
and do they go down to the same parking lot?
I don't think so.
And we've seen,
Well, that would be,
They have to be approved.
well, part of the issue is the lack of spaces. We opened a new safe parking lot. It's not just District 7, it's not just your neighborhood that we're looking for solutions.
Down to my home.
What?
They have a building down to my house.
District 2 in Rose Creek, over in a Rose Creek parking lot that we had, we opened that for safe parking. Jewish Family Service uses their own parking lot to have people there. And then I forget what the fourth one is.
Bottom of Rail Drive at 15, not too far from Walmart.
There you go. So we are trying to find more spaces for these folks because we don't want them on the block right in front of your tree, in front of your fire hydrant and blocking stop signs with their big RVs. They need to go somewhere else that we can help them and assist them in doing that. And
I think
so,
part of the problem though is that a lot of those people do not want help.
exactly.
They do not want help. Because I've worked with homeless before.
I assure you, she said, some of those folks do not want help. I assure you that I know that there is a portion of folks who don't want help.
Yeah.
The help that we can provide them is a place to go park their RV.
Yeah.
And that's the amount of help they accept, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of folks who live in that parking lot who are students, who have jobs, who are just unable to afford their rent. So considering the folks who truly are trying to build out of that circumstance versus the folks who have maybe they've given up, maybe they decided, no, this is my best option. I don't think the solution would be to close that so that they can park up the hill though. But when you have concerns about specific individuals, that's definitely something that raising with our office, because we have a great relationship with Jewish Family Service. That contract is, it used to be just the morning, just the evening. They used to go drive in at 6 p.m. and have to leave by 7 a.m. And a lot of them would have their cars break down on the side of the street going up and down. All sorts of problems, right? We got it promoted to a 24-hour parking lot so that they would not be as impactful on the neighborhood. That contract is, I feel like it's something in the range of 1.75 million a year, because we pay Jewish Family Service to facilitate the staffing, security, the energy, the toilets, the Wi-Fi. They provide food to people, and they also go in and provide services to people. They help people sign up for community college classes there, things like that. There's a whole bunch of different things that go on there to try to help these folks. So if you have a very specific issue, if you call Eastern Division, goes to the voicemail.
Yeah.
Call us. We can get to it within 24 hours. If you call during the workday, we are there. And if you email or text or call Miles, that can get done with haste.
Because we've seen graffiti on some of the retaining walls next to the house at the very top of the hill. We've seen graffiti in that empty parking lot that's, I guess it used to be a gas station or something many years ago. I didn't know who voted for that area to be used as a homeless.
That was not voted on. That was selected by city staff because of the limited amount of city space we have. So the number of, I'll put it this way. The city administration building is down there on 3rd and B. No. 3rd and C. That's a block. It's a whole city block. We have the civic theater, we have the city council building where we work and the mayor works, city attorney's office, then you have Golden Hall. Golden Hall used to be a convention center. Now it's a homeless shelter. So we are using our city property to house homeless individuals because we are taking it upon ourselves to do something that We don't want them to be out on the street. We don't want them to be living out in the community as much as possible. We want them to be indoors. So it's healthier, it's safer, a million better things, right? Obviously, we don't have enough shelter beds, though I voted to approve every single expenditure for more shelter beds possible.
Who pays for that?
That is a combination of multiple things. General fund money, that means just your general tax dollars that we can spend on things like city staffing, police, fire, parks, libraries, that sort of stuff. Things that you pay for like water, that's an enterprise fund and that's completely separate. And then there's federal and state grants. A lot of state grants to support our homelessness efforts, ending and preventing homelessness efforts. So that is a mix of dollars, similar to the streetlights. That's partly our money, partly federal grant. So it's not all you, is what I should say. The bottom line on that aspect is that was selected because it was considered city property with enough space to house enough people for their cars and them living in it. And the maintenance cost was lower than doing it in other spots. And other spots that we already have, we are using to help homeless individuals as much as possible. But I think the number one thing we know from everybody is we would much rather have a space where people can come together rather than them being on your sidewalk in a tent or in their sleeping bag. So that's the philosophy. I know it hasn't solved the problem by any measure, but that is actually one of our most successful spots to get a person in and then actually into house. Like
That's one.
I'm gonna go to Les next, but yes,
So this would be a last question.
that's fine.
So how come a place like Fort Island doesn't have a problem with that compared to other sections of the city?
Because their mayor just takes the homeless people and throws them out.
Where's the money?
They send them over to downtown and they just drive them over the bridge, drop them off at Father Joe's. It's really not successful.
It's horrible down there.
And anytime,
Oh, they gotta go somewhere.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
think I'd rather have the RVs parked down at the bottom of the hill than across from the coffee shop over by CVS.
But by the grace of God, there go I.
yeah, right.
Why are you? Why can't you be somewhere in this county?
We have, so just to be very clear, city of San Diego, our boundaries is within our, and the number one thing that the council and mayor have said is, hey, the city of San Diego spends about $70 million trying to figure out how to house, how to help, how to serve homeless individuals to get them to not being homeless. And what is El Cajon doing? El Cajon is trying to make it so that when a homeless person has a voucher to go rent a hotel, they say, no, you're not allowed to rent a hotel in our city. So that's probably illegal. And on top of that, it's basically just saying, oh, shove the problem over to San Diego. We also have the mental health hospital in the Midway District, which is where if a person is really having a psychiatric problem to the point where it's what's called a 5150, where they're harm to themselves or others, they come into San Diego. And when they're done being treated, they're not in San Diego. The nature of our city is that it is the biggest city in the area. It is the heart of the problem where people can come get served. Now, I know it seems frustrating to have it within the neighborhood of Serra Mesa, but Rose Creek has one. They have safe camping in other spots, and our shelters, we don't have a tent shelter in Serra Mesa, but we have several in downtown. We are doing as much as we can to serve each group within the homeless population. So veterans, there's people who are escaping violence, there's people who've lost their job and are out of time, there's people who are suffering from drug addiction and mental health issues. I push harder than anybody to get more mental health resources, mental health beds, because when a person, or detox beds, because right now we have 75 detox beds in the county. 75, I think we have more than 75 people who are suffering from drug addiction.
Yeah.
So pushing hard for those other resources, I'm there with you. That spot was selected based on a number of criteria. And I know it's frustrating that it's in your neighborhood, but it's actually one of the highest, most successful spots in helping people become back to have housing.
And I'll just finish. Drugs and alcohol are not allowed there, correct? So it's not
You aren't allowed to be, yeah.
households in that area.
yes,
Intoxicated.
yeah, if you are violent and intoxicated, they
Yeah.
will prevent you from coming. Yes. But that doesn't mean that it's not happening. I'm just saying that,
It's not allowed, it's not happening.
well, believe me when I tell you that one of the biggest complaints from the homeless population, the unsheltered population is like, hey, I'm suffering from addiction. Where do you want me to do it? If I don't use addiction, if I don't use this, I'm gonna go through nearly deadly withdrawals. Or I could use this and you're making me follow these rules that might hurt me, so I don't have a space for my type of thing, which is why I want detox beds. Which, like, we need way more for folks who are ready to take that leap and say, I don't want to use drugs anymore. Where's the bed? Oh, we don't have one for you.
Like these, right?
A lot of people don't have IDs because, yeah, some of them absolutely do.
And some of them aren't from California.
There's a proportion that we're not from San Diego, but it's actually not anywhere near a majority. It's
Minimal.
there's components to the problem that you're absolutely right on, but it doesn't describe the majority of folks. What I'll say is this: the number one thing we hear from unsheltered individuals is, I've lost all my documentation because as I was sleeping out on the sidewalk, someone in the middle of the night came and stole my backpack. So I'm pressed to try to help that person. But believe me when I tell you, the negative externalities of having the safe parking lot in Serra Mesa when there's a problem. I'm not the Ghostbusters, but who are you gonna call? Us. Please do. Really, I mean that. Les, thank you.
Yeah, well, the reason why it was selected used to be the parking lot for Falcon Stadium employees.
Yep.
This-
Employees.
That's what it used to be.
It's way better having them in a parking lot because at Mission Bay, it used to be horrendous. There was motorhomes everywhere. And once they open up those lots to the motorhomes, it's so much nicer down Mission Bay.
Really appreciate your questions. Just so you know, like, if you have a question, pop it up, let's do it. We're there and I'm happy to answer them as we go. Is it about unsafe camping?
No.
Okay, I'm gonna get through the unsafe camping and then you tell me well, let me ask you, Sandra, what's your question about?
I just wanted to know if you have an update on the unleaded fuel.
The unleaded fuel?
Yes.
Oh, I know that Miles does. We'll get to it. Thank you. Yes. Unsafe camping. So now, one of the issues is how do we not become Coronado, which just says, oh, there's a person who looks homeless, let's grab him, throw him in a cop car and drive him over to Father Joe's, versus letting people do whatever they want, right? And I'll tell you, we don't have the resources to have the police arrest 9,000 people and drive them to Poway. I wouldn't think that would be an advisable method either, because the amount of resource, potential violence, there's a lot of unfairness in that too. You know, there's a million things that Coronado can get away with and seems to get away with, and I don't understand why they are allowed to get away with that. But they also, you have to go all the way down to Imperial Beach, and then you have to walk all the way up and jump on a bus and get up into Coronado in a way that, you know, you can walk from a shelter in downtown and be in Serra Mesa by the end of the day, right? Unsafe camping. As we continue to try to help individuals, enforcement was one of our most fundamental problems. And I can tell you this, as a former prosecutor before COVID, there was a lot more enforcement of the legal issues that unsheltered individuals were dealing with, particularly drugs, particularly with drug use outside. And when there was violence as well. During COVID, there was a lot less enforcement because of the nature of protecting our employees from exposure, but also making, you didn't want to take a homeless individual who was in their tent out of it because they were there, because exposing them to the people who were in the tent next to them. There's a whole bunch of things that went into COVID that were very difficult to judge at the time. But long story short, the city council voted 5-4, and I was in the 5, to enforce more against people who were camping on our sidewalks, in our parks, near our waterways, in our canyons. It was not an easy decision, but I think it was the right decision. And essentially, the unsafe camping ordinance prohibits encampments that are within 2 blocks of a school, 2 blocks of a park, within parks where we've put signs. If maybe you've seen in your signs, in your parks, you'll see a tent with a cross out that says the new municipal code. Near on transit stations, because people were afraid to use the trolley when you'd have to walk past a tent. Things like that. So, however, because of the state of our federal law, and the Supreme Court took this case up and is going to be deciding it later this year, if we didn't have a shelter bed for a person, we could not enforce the law against them to remove them off the street. basically, in essence, they said it was cruel and unusual punishment to remove a person because they are simply homeless. Long story short, like just to boil it down to 2 sentences, cruel and unusual punishment that has been interpreted by the federal courts to say you can't punish a person for being something. You can only punish someone for doing something. In the 1970s, you used to prosecute a person for being an alcoholic. They'd be like, oh, you're an alcoholic, I'm throwing you in jail. It's like, well, that is a state of being. I'm not drinking and getting drunk right now and going and doing something wrong. And so the court said, you can't prosecute and call someone a criminal for being something. And in 2018, the court said, being homeless is not doing homelessness. It's that they don't have the money, they don't have the option. And so if you don't have a shelter bed for this person, you cannot arrest them and take them somewhere else. So that state of the law is what we were trying to figure out the solution to. It's like, all right, so we can't use the police if this person, now, if they were doing something violent, if they were openly doing drugs, they could be, that can be addressed. So what we pushed through was that. What I have observed is a sharp decrease in the amount of homelessness downtown. The data shows that. We opened up 2 different shelters and a safe tent site in downtown. As soon as the date hit where the enforcement was going to start, those spots were taken up very quickly. A lot of homeless individuals who live in a tent said, okay, well, I'm taking my tent and I'm going to your lot. I'm going to where you're telling me to go. And those who didn't want to take that, as you point out, some people make the choice not to have help. They left. Now, what we want to make sure that they didn't do is go live in Ruffin Canyon, that they didn't go to Mission Trails Park, that they're not living along the San Diego River. That has its own problems that it creates, of course. But we have that plan in place and we have that law in place. And then it's like, all right, where are we going to build our next shelter spot? Where's our next safe parking spot? What are we going to do at H Barracks, which is the former fire department training spot over next to the airport? And of course, Point Lomans right now are saying, don't bring any more homeless people around here. It's like, well, the city owns many acres where you can come park your car and put your tent, and we can have you in a secure zone with security at night and a toilet. So you go in the porta potty or the toilet that we have for you instead of on in the gutter. And so we're working towards do that. It's also expensive, and that's a mix of general fund money and other grant funds. The state of California has lots of different pots of money for this type of thing. So for me, it was fundamentally the health risks that are presented by individuals living on the street. That was the thing in the top of my mind where I said, we can't allow that to continue to happen, because one of the things that we hear, and one of the things I believe, and I think many of you would agree with this, that if you were doing a lot of the things on the street that an unsheltered person was doing, you feel like you would be held accountable. It's like, yeah, there has to be a set accountability and enforcement of law across the board. So given that philosophical point of view, I voted yes. And on top of that, we're not giving up on trying to help people get into permanent supportive housing, help them get a better job so that they can actually afford the rent, things like that. Those aren't like out the window. We are never giving up on those. But we needed to make sure that people know, hey, if you're going to go to Balboa Park for the weekend, you expect that you're not going to be having to walk over someone's feces, that you're not going to be stepping over needles, that you're not going to be walking past a tent with a person screaming in it, that sort of thing. And believe me, I see the other side's point of view on this, but I thought the risks and rewards lent in favor of yes. Behavioral health bed crisis. I mentioned how I talked about that already, but we're bringing that up with the county and the state. The state has Prop 1 on your March ballot so that we can get these beds. We need 10,000 more beds across the entire state, because the city of San Diego region only has 75 detox beds. We need more of those. If a person is willing to say, hey, I've been addicted and I am ready to quit, but I need the right facility, there's only 75 of those. That is crazy. And it shouldn't be on families to have to say, hey, take my extra bedroom while you're having all these problems. Moms and dads aren't set with the medicine and the care and the counseling to take care of people. I know my brother died from the drug addiction, so I know this. So we're working really hard to take care of those folks. And those people are sometimes housed, sometimes they're homeless. We're trying to help both populations of people, regardless of what their status is. And if they're homeless and they need detox, that's usually the first step to try to get them back on the right track. Okay, now we're going to one last thing, second to last thing. No, last, yes. Keeping San Diego accountable. We've had a couple big things come before the city, and I've been really strong advocates on getting them right. One was the Midway Arena, the Midway development, where the Pechanga Sports Arena is. The group was chosen that's called Midway Rising, and you've probably seen in the news that they promised everything under the sun, and I was like, oh, well, now we can't build. Now we're not gonna have 250 middle income homes that are rent restricted for people who are middle income. Those have to be market rate, and they're walking this back, and they're walking that back, and oh, we're not sure if we're gonna be able to do that. Oh, and on top of that, we're gonna need more of your tax dollars to be able to afford that construction. And I'm there, I'm like, hey, I asked the developer in September 23. Was it January or March? I think it was March of 2023. The developer came up and interest rates were going high, which meant everything was becoming more unaffordable to build. And I said, hey, you said, are you saying that you're gonna live up to all your promises, even though every developer I've talked to in San Diego says that interest rates are killing their projects because they can't afford to build them anymore? And he said, this is a long-term project. We will not be changing things. We will live up to it because on a long-term scale, we know we don't need to change it. I'm paraphrasing what he said, but he basically said, no, yeah, interest rates don't matter to me because it's long time horizon. The next meeting he comes up and says, oh, well, we can't afford the 250 affordable units anymore. It's actually 2,000 affordable units, but 250 are middle income, which are essentially if you make anywhere between $110,000 to $125,000 a year as a family of four, they'd only be paying 25% of your rent. There's a calculation, it's an arithmetic thing, but fundamentally just think a nurse and a school teacher who have a family of four, that's the type of home for them that they would qualify to get their rent restricted in. So they've been changing that. I've been saying, you guys have to be kidding me. You can't make these promises, win the bid, and then think we're not gonna hold you to it. So as things go, I'm gonna continue to ask those hard questions because you know who owns that property? You do. The city owns that. You as the city. And if they're gonna make us a big promise and say, pick us, we'll develop you, paradise, and then not live up to it. It's like, well, what does that say to all the other applicants who said, hey, we can do something good, but what they're offering is a lie, and his offering is not nearly achievable. It tells every other good actor, just don't even apply for the city to get these sorts of things because the city's not listening to you. So I'm really hitting hard on that.
Along those lines.
Yes.
Is the city developing the Macy's and Bed Bath & Beyond property?
The city is not developing those. That
I
property
saw it on the news this week.
the property is owned by a new organization that bought it. So it used to be owned by Westfield, which is known for malls. It was
Yeah.
Two different parts of the property were bought by different groups, and they're looking to change that into housing and a bunch of different things.
Yeah.
Well, let's be very clear. If you build an apartment building or a big housing development in San Diego, a portion of it by law has to be low income. It's usually 10%, depending on certain circumstances, it could be 15. Now, let me tell you what low income is. Low income is 60% of the area median income, which I said earlier for a family of four is up like $109,000. 60% of $109,000 is $65,000 is what your family makes. So low income is not what you imagine as truly. It's low income, but there's actually extremely low income. So a portion of it has to be set aside so that there's an affordability measure. The rest of it can be built to market. Some people call it market, some people call it luxury, but truly in the sense of the word, it's market rate, right?
But then they took out complete communities so they can offsite those affordable housing, so they can stuff them in single family homes and just call it ADU. So they're not required to include them any longer on site because they changed the complete communities, right?
Right. What that means is that within either the same neighborhood or within a few miles, a developer who's trying to build the bottom line premise is we, as the city council, the mayor, experts, whoever else, is saying we need to have more housing so that people can afford to live in San Diego, because there's the market is saturated with demand and not enough supply. If we have more supply, the price should drop. Also, we don't have space for the population that we're growing here. Fundamentally, what we are understanding from being able to off-site the affordable, which again, I repeat, is 60% of AMI. It's not people who are making $20,000 a year. It's not people who are making $10,000. It's people who are making $65,000 a year. If you build that off-site, you can build more of those units, because building it on-site at a luxury spot, the price per square foot to construct it is cost prohibitive.
That's what the problem is in San Diego. It's a huge problem. You're taking downtown, this is just affordable housing. You've taken downtown and you've allowed it to be developed without including affordable housing on site within the community. And so I just have a problem with using semantics, because 3 miles means from Hillcrest to Linda Vista. You can toss them quite far. So
I hear you loud and clear. Yes. All right. Good point, though. To be very clear, SB 10 was talked about earlier. That was not passed in the city of San Diego. That is a state law that that the cities can opt into. Essentially, the city councils have to say, we accept that. It basically, I forget how you described it earlier, undoes zoning, right? Loopholes in zoning. The city council has not voted on that. The mayor has not proposed it. It was out of the housing plan the vote that you were talking about. So if you're against SB 10, it's not on the docket. And there's only actually one municipality in the entire state of California that's accepted it. And it's like a rural municipality up in the Bay Area. It's like it's not Redwood something, but it's, Redwood something. It's more rural than that. It's more rural than that, actually. So hardly anybody is impacted by SB 10 in the state right now, because no city is accepting it. So just want you to know that. Important to know that. As we move forward, I just want you to know that my staff and I are here to help you, to listen to you, figure out the best solution to get what you want done. That doesn't mean we can deliver everything, but it does mean that we can figure out how to deliver it with the right tools, with the right grants from different levels of government. And if it's me personally showing up to another elected official's office to get it done, that's something I'm willing to do. That's something I have done. And the frustration that you feel about the problems in your community, I feel them palpably as well, even though I don't live in Serra Mesa. I really take this job personal, because I know that you've had a lot of council members, you've had a lot of mayors, you have a lot of assembly members and Congress members and everything. And you want to see things done. Nothing bothers me more than telling you, no, we can't do that. Or sorry, I don't know why that happened. All my life, I was a person who wanted to get 100% on every single piece of homework, because I want to get everything right. And I take this job much the same way. That mentality is not something that has ever changed in my life. Just ask my wife. The things that you want to see fixed, I want to say yes to you. I want to see it fixed. And I think it's just, it's funny the number of times the mayor, the CEO just says, you just keep grading on us about this dumb little road. I'm like, it's not a dumb little road. If it was your road, you wouldn't call it a dumb little road. Now, to be fair, they haven't ever called it a dumb little road. But I can see in the email responses my staff gets back from some city staff members. I can see the comments on Nextdoor. You care about your community. You elected me to care about it just as much as you. Please trust us to email us, call us, ask us, leave a voicemail, help you figure this out, because I am jealous about getting 100% success on things. It really matters to me. And I think about these sorts of things. Just say this, and I'm gonna go to you. I came up with the policy to expand paid parental leave at the city after reading a tweet at 5:10 in the morning. Because that's what all responsible politicians do, is get on Twitter at 5:10 in the morning. But I just was like, hey, what's the news in the world right now? Let me look. And I saw it, and it was somebody complaining about how hard it was and all these sorts of things. And by the end of the day, I had announced a policy saying, we're gonna change this and make this better. It only took me a day to say, I'm gonna make this better. I wanna do that with you. I call transportation directors, I call the deputy directors, I call the program coordinators, I call the associate program directors, I call the associate analyst and coordinators, all the different titles that you probably just shake your head at when you see the bottom of the signature back from the city of San Diego. I call those people. And I also thank those people when they get that stuff done, so that the next time I ask them for help, they remember who said thank you, so that I can deliver these things for you. I love this job and I love serving you. So thank you for electing me. Thank you for giving me these 4 years to be able to do this for you. And I am jealous to get it done more for you. Please, all it takes is a phone call and you saying, I want to see this done. Thank you very much. All right, let's go to your question.
I have two questions, and we were discussing this particular problem at the planning meeting, but one is we're aware that the city made the decision without asking for the community input, and they are planning as of January to reduce the 4 lanes on Mission Village to 2 lanes in front of the Taft Middle School.
Video.
And the majority of us in the meeting were against it, and we didn't feel that the city was listening to our input. And I don't know if you heard about that or not. And,
I was at the Mission Valley Library when
oh, the.
300 people showed up and said what they wanted to see out of it.
Right.
Well, yes.
I want to show a video really quick
Oh,
that
what?
was taken, and just because I don't know if you've been
I mean, I have been out there, but
when
this is your video. Huh?
They're all normal parking and stuff.
I guess with 2 lanes, when traffic backs up to 0 miles an hour, it'll be somehow safer.
Yeah, I want to add to what she said. We asked the traffic engineer, or I asked the traffic engineer, have you been out here to see situations? Has he worked with Taft Middle School to come up with a plan for how to handle if you switch it to 2 lanes? He's never been out there when school has been out.
Is that accurate?
Yeah, Everett, yeah. And he doesn't plan on coming out. I practically begged him in an email, please come out. And if you aren't used to working with the school district, maybe now's the time to work with the school district to come up with a plan before you implement this. I never got a response. And so, I mean, we sent a letter. I think you've probably seen this letter with all of our concerns. We sent it to the mayor. We never heard back from the mayor.
Oh, yeah.
The
Yeah.
mayor never responded. It lists all the different the problems with that you saw on here, U-turns, that type of thing. It's not a safe situation now, and it's going to be even worse because that dirt lot where everybody parks, I mean, the whole lot is full of cars when school gets out. Eventually, there's gonna be a building there. So what can you do for us, Raul, to prevent this from happening until there's a plan with the school district?
Do me the first favor, which is the last email you sent that didn't get responded to.
Miles has it.
Miles has it. Good.
I always copy Miles, so I mean.
Miles tells me to copy.
Media involved, because I think media might be, it seems like the mayor will respond if media gets involved.
I know exactly what will happen if we do that. School's gonna say it's the city's gonna say it's the school.
That's exactly what the schools did say.
Yeah.
The school has, I've been in contact with the school, and they've said, oh, well, it's the school, it's the city is the one that makes the decisions.
So here's what we'll do, because if I ask Everett to come out and we walk him through it, he'll be there. So let's do that. Because if we ask Eric Dargan, hey, you're the COO, we need the traffic engineer to walk through here because our constituents are not being listened to. We'll get that done. Now the walkthrough is one minor piece. It's a step towards a solution. What I'll say is traffic management right there needs professionals to help manage the traffic, because part of it is that we can't necessarily control people doing illegal conduct like they're doing, but with the right plan, they will be prevented from doing it. At least most of them will. Like all law enforcement, most people will follow it if they know that there's an accountability mechanism. Some people will not follow it. So then what we need to do is when we walk through with Everett, we need to have the traffic division from STPD with us so that they can give us their analysis, because they're going to have their tactics for appropriately preventing that. We have to have, we don't necessarily need the school board member to be with us, but the principal and
Superintendent was copied by
okay,
Shauna, but nothing's happened.
Yeah.
I don't care either.
because they say it's all us, right?
Yeah.
Understood. That is the first thing that I can do for you. And you'll be there too. Okay. I see. All right. I saw a head shake. We'll do that. First, real quick, I see we have several questions. Okay, raise your hand if you have a question.
I just want to add to that.
Please add.
Just
Yes.
a year ago, at our planning group meeting, the teacher, the hair, I think that's how you pronounce the last name, came to us with concern about the kids crossing the streets, they're jaywalking, they're going through, there's cars. And he had a really big safety concern for the kids. That was over a year ago, he came to our group. It's unfunded, and that's where the frustration happens, is that they're gonna fund redoing, the one-way street on each side with bike lanes. But what about for the kids that we've been asking for this crosswalk and it's been approved, but it's unfunded? So that's another concern that we have, that, it's just going, completely.
There was a lot of suggestions made by the community that wasn't interested in, and there were all suggestions regarding safety of the kids coming out of school, and they met school and they have to go in all different directions. So ideas came up, but he wasn't interested. It was more or less, we were going to move forward with this January. Sorry, it was not good.
Do you think more videos will help from different angles, like the other opposite side of the street, facing the back of what's happening? Or maybe that parking lot that has 30 cars in it?
I don't think so, because I believe you, and he's not, the people who can literally fix this, don't seem to believe it. So they'll believe it when they see it. Another video is probably, when you have a downhill grade of 20%, not 20%, of 15%, the speed limit of 45 with a blind curve, and you say, hey, is this appropriate for a stop sign so that people don't get killed in this intersection? They say no. doesn't meet the number of points. Then the department is designed to say no. And it takes us dragging them out and saying, look at it, and it's gonna need a yes. So we will get there. Thank you for bringing this up.
Can I do my second?
Quick thing. I just gotta say real quick, Sandra Stahl has been very patient about wanting the update with Montgomery Gibbs. Miles, I need you to correct me if I'm wrong, but this is essentially the plan. And it was not the plan as I had intended it. It was not the plan as it was intentionally, or it was originally given to me. And it's definitely the plan that you have pointed out was not the original plan, Sandra. So we fought to get the unleaded fuel tank. And I used all your emails about the special grades of fuel and why can't we get that, you know, pilots have to get their sticker so that they can get it, all that sort of stuff. I've asked those questions. So we wanted to get the unleaded fuel tank on there. Instead of going forward by buying the unleaded fuel tank that can be maneuvered and go up to the right planes, as part of the renovation that the tenants are doing at Montgomery Gibbs, they decided, hey, let's actually, as we regrade the parking lot and regrade this entire southeast corner, so that we can install it permanently, that requires about 5 other components. That was all part of the capital improvements project that they had been working on. So when I went and pushed and said, hey, I want this much money for this pad and for this thing, it was like, yeah, that's the money for that. What I was not told was we're going to embed that into the broader redevelopment of that entire corner. And I keep saying, like, well, that's time lost with leaded fuel. But they refuse to buy the moving one because the moving unleaded fuel tank, because if they buy that one and then want to eventually install the permanent one that's there, it's essentially, in their eyes, lost money because it's like, well, that one can just be maneuvered around the airport, can't it?
Can I interject something?
Please do interject.
Okay, the last Airports Advisory Committee meeting.
Yep.
The airport's deputy director announced that they are looking for insurance for the moving tank.
Okay.
So you're
Good news to me.
I know, so you're getting one story and they're saying something else. And you know, you've worked with me on this for ever since you got in office.
Yeah.
And it's just one delay after another. And do you know the city of Long Beach? The mayor of Long Beach, when he was a councilman, he pushed for the airport to get unlimited.
30 minutes of branch library will be closing in 30 minutes. Computer access.
I will take your questions.
Okay.
So now, you're no longer able to set 5 minutes with you. If you need a library card or a link card, you can come to the front desk.
That voice is on a 5-year contract and that's X number of dollars. Okay.
Okay, back to Long Beach.
Thank you for coming.
Okay, back to Long Beach because it's really important because when he was a city councilman, he was pushing for it.
Long Beach got it.
He
Okay.
got to be mayor. Within 1 year, they got unleaded fuel.
Yeah. Well,
Okay, it has been 6 years since I've been pushing for this. So there's something going on that's doesn't smell good. I know you know that.
yes, because I've taken your emails into the meetings with the mayor to explain to him that as long as the pilot gets this little sticker, they're allowed to have it, and we should be able to provide it.
So anyway, you're not getting the full story because they're saying one
Yeah.
thing. And so if you could check into that and do a little.
Do that thing. Great, thank you, Sam.
Appreciate it.
Please raise your hand if you have a question. Okay, I'm seeing 4 hands. And a quick question. All right, we have 4 questions and a quick question, and I'm gonna go one, since you've asked a question, or made a point, you made a good point, but you, since you haven't, and then I'm gonna go back to you because you had a second question that was looped into your question. We'll go back to you and then we'll come up front for the quick question. Does that sound good? Okay, very good, please.
You know what's happening with the building that it's an old library on one hidden, Deborah, by the CGS.
The old library was supposed to be put into like youth beds for folks for, I don't know if it was homeless youth or if it was foster youth. Yeah.
This graduated from Boston.
Yeah. Miles, do you have an update on what's going on there? Because that's kind of been stagnant for many years.
Yes, they had plans to go through with it this past competition in December. They had these those opportunities, so now it's kind of there could be in there, that, you know, so we'll have more.
Is it at all available for something other than what they're, for the other?
Well, I'm not sure, that'll be one else.
I'm trying to find somebody to contact.
I can, get that situated.
Okay.
And I put it on Get It Done to get all of the couch, the baby stuff and the bicycle, exercise bicycle just the other day. So somebody should be coming out to get all that stuff. But I did get a response.
Let me know
Okay.
if they don't, let us know if they don't.
Very good. Thank you for that question. Yes, yes.
When you talk about key, it's Everett that you've been with about
Transportation engineering.
make sure he comes when school gets out.
Oh, yeah, no, that,
Right.
yes.
Because sometimes the police, certain times in the day, they're not there after 4.
Bring the engineer when it's actually busy.
Yeah. I mean, 3:49, 3:49.
3:49? Okay,
Right.
straightforward enough. Very good, thank you.
Oh, yeah, that's right. You have to know which day.
Yeah, Wednesdays are better.
3:49 on a Tuesday, well, we'll be in the council Thursday would be better, yes. Okay, we're going back to you for your second question.
My second question is that I see as potential safety concern with 2 green lights coming from different directions. So it's when you're exiting Friars Road in the westbound direction and then you're going up Mission Village Hill.
Yep,
That used to be a yield, now it's almost always a green light.
okay,
And the green light coming up from the Snapdragon
Oh, yeah,
Stadium
that's true.
up the Mission Village Hill is also green, they're green at the same time.
okay,
I've always heard about that.
And
Okay.
when people are trying to walk across, they're almost getting run over.
Cause the bad part is, it's a green arrow pointing uphill coming from Friar, while those guys have a green light. So you think there's no.
you think no one's coming,
But they
you
both.
think the merging lane is red,
Right.
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah, it's pretty bizarre.
that's crazy.
And it used to be a yield, that little curve walk, so it slows
Yes,
down.
yes, totally,
Down to a lot of this.
understood.
Bike lanes there because, there's so many bikes going up that hill. You gotta be careful with those too.
That's I can't believe.
There's a car that's going on there.
I think I've seen 2 bikes ever go.
If you bike up that hill every day, it's really.
We need to hear that.
Back to Taft and the Village Road.
Yep.
I've been on lifelong cyclist here in San Diego and Serra Mesa in particular. I've never had a problem on Mission Village as a cyclist. Right, I mean, I know they now cut that down to the 1 lane and bike and all that stuff, and I'm sure there are people who really appreciate it, but it's a solution to a problem that didn't exist. Now, back to the traffic engineers. People have metrics. The traffic engineers and the city coalition of bicyclists have metrics. They wanna have so many miles of bicycle friendly lanes and blah, blah, blah. So the sharrows that are already there should count towards that. And taking Mission Village down in the area in front of Taft down to 2 lanes is not probably going to help with bicycle safety, and it may actually hurt in terms of student safety. Now, there's communities around here that have those nice, like Kensington and La Jolla, that have those nice flashing light crosswalks. As we start to upgrade, and put in other crosswalks or have crosswalks, if they're needed, they should be like they have in the new communities. So we press the button, it starts flashing.
Yeah.
Traffic has to stop.
The big block.
Maybe instead of spending all the money to reduce the lanes down to 2, which seems unnecessary.
But you still wanna pave the road though, we'll still pave it, we'll still, yeah,
Just pave it, just keep the striping.
yes, okay,
But the slight thing as it is right now, you're not gonna undo the baby that's been done on the other part of it. But let's just keep the part that's in front of the path the way that it is, and realize that have community members or cyclists be part of that discussion. Not the city bicycle coalition, they have a metric that they need to hit.
I understand,
Bravo.
thank you. And you're a cyclist, yeah, so I appreciate that. All right,
And that drop-off zone is outdated as well, so that drop-off zone has not been updated in who knows how long.
okay, Got it. Understood. And you had the quick question.
My concern is, I come up Mission Village all the time and I turn right on Rhonda, which is the first street.
Mhm.
And there is a space that's about like this with dotted lines. And a space that is 4 times that with a solid white line. If there's somebody coming up the hill behind me, going 45 miles an hour and I'm slowing down for 25. It's problematic because I can get a ticket for crossing the solid white.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I can get a ticket for crossing a solid white line.
Just go out there and paint it black.
Literally, I had it on the map right here to get an understanding of what you're saying. Because I know where Rhonda is.
So that's where the 2 lanes merge into 1 lane?
Yep.
There's 2 lanes coming up the hill, but it merges before you get to Rhonda
Mhm.
into 1 lane.
Yep,
And I have to slow down to about, 20 to turn a corner.
yep.
And there's cars behind me. So, more often than not, I have crossed that solid white line. To keep
Because you
it.
don't want to back up the person behind you.
Yeah.
Just with that little dotted line.
It's like.
So the
you're-
dotted
you're
line needs to
pulling it
be
through.
longer.
And that part right there where the solid white line is, it has a no parking sign, right? It's like going down the hill, there's no parking, right?
No,
I'm talking about coming up the hill.
Yeah, I know, I'm just saying, you can't park facing up there, yeah.
Yeah.
So essentially you're parking, you're not parking, you're driving over that
I'm
space,
driving
yes,
over
I hear you loud and clear.
into where the bike lane is starting.
Let's understand that. I don't know if it needs to be readjusted, so it's a broken line.
Broken line needs to come back.
Yes.
It's too short.
Got
Yeah,
it.
it's too short, because a lot of people use it as a thoroughfare to cut the other people up, because they don't wanna wait behind the people in the.
I tell you, so many times, I wish I could do what Kramer did in that one Seinfeld episode where you just go down the line and just change the lane yourself. It's like, that's not intuitive at all, right? I wouldn't, but that would also be problematic for me to make those decisions, but thank you for that point. Thank you.
Yeah.
Kramer soon point out.
I mean. They hurt me because I know about.
You come up that hill.
Yep.
You're completely blocking to the changes that are happening, so you're coming up, and the second you get to Rhonda. It immediately merges over and you have no warning, and because it's blind, you're coming up over a hill. All of a sudden you come up, and if you're in that right lane, boom, you're in the bicycle lane and you're breaking the law.
Yeah.
That should, so
That's
that
exactly
line needs to come down, the dotted line, so people can get over, step 1. Step 2 is the transition needs to be past where you come over the hill, like about 50 yards.
Got it. Very reasonable.
Go out.
Thank you.
You'll get that taken care of.
What I'm telling you is I will walk the guy who can literally fix it out there and tell him what needs to be changed. Thank you. Well, we've come to the end of our time. I want to first of all say thank you. I recognize many of the same faces and I appreciate you coming out year after year. Some of the faces I've never met, and it's a pleasure to meet you, hear your questions, hear your concerns. Thank you for hearing me out, because sometimes the decisions don't always end up the way you intend them to, and that's just a hard part of this job. But I'm absolutely committed to listening to you and trying to execute what you want. It takes us walking these people who don't want to listen out here to do it for you. And with that, I will take one last comment in the back.
This is a positive comment.
Thank you.
You came to our 92122 celebration and stated that the village grand road was in repair this following week, which is a nightmare. The crew showed up at 7 o'clock that Monday morning, a massive crew, a big job, and they repaired that entire road and say thank you from the neighborhood to carry the election, the whole neighborhood.
You did. Thank you for doing that. They'll remember that forever, because not many neighborhoods would ever do that. But I'm not surprised that Serra Mesa did it. Totally. Thank you all very much. And if you need anything, we're here for you. Thank you. All right. Jeez, don't let me end all your meetings.
Yeah, yeah.
the light stand.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
The now forecast is the storm's gonna break Friday. Oh, so I'll show up Saturday. All right, thanks.
Is there anybody in the lobby still?
Oh, we didn't do a chat one.
Have you talked about it in the last week?
No, I haven't talked to you. You know what, somebody might have. Oh, shoot, sorry.
Oh, you're just one.
Yeah.
There isn't anyone stuck in the lobby, is there?
Well, this person.
Of course.
What should I tell her?
Me too, so I can take care of the baby. Yeah.
Well, I guess we'll see you at our next meeting.
Okay, sounds good.
See you then.
Thank you, appreciate it, thanks for being here.
Well.
Thanks so much. Thank you very much. Of course. Let us know what we can do for you. So, yes. Really?
Of course, thank you for being here.
Okay.
Thank you kindly.
Thank you for coming.
Of course. I'm gonna try to aim to get, I do it by first week of March. I think that's.
Oh, that would be
probably
much
fastest.
better, yeah, because I have company coming.
Okay, well,
When
I
it's raining.
won't bother you. Hi,
Just,
for her. Go for
I'm
it.
gonna bring this Saturday,
Okay,
just so
great,
you know, Carl gave it to me.
okay, perfect, perfect, see you then.
Just graduated music.
I actually don't.
But, oh, okay.